Hello again, my dear conscripts, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, we shall be casting our ever-critical eye over another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard datasheet. And this time, the legendary unit in question is the Storm Chimera. Originally designed for the Death Corps of Krieg, the Storm Chimera is very cool. It's really cool. It gets like an autocannon and like spaced armor on the side. It's really badass. And so I'm pretty excited to review it today. So without further ado, let's mount up, roll out, and drive right into this thing.
Attention guardsmen, the Commissariat has detected you have not yet liked this video. Do so immediately or else you will face the Emperor's wrath. And anyone who has not yet subscribed to the channel will be transferred to the penal battalions. That is all. Move out!
First things first, if you are a veteran of the Imperial Guard, then the Storm Chimera is basically like a normal Chimera in all ways, except that it gets an autocannon in the turret rather than a heavy bolter, a multi-laser, or a heavy flamer. It has exactly the same stats otherwise. So if you're familiar with the Chimera, then you're going to be pretty familiar with the Storm Chimera. However, even if you are a veteran, we're going to be discussing at the end of this video some of the implications and tactical uses of the Storm Chimera. For example, how the points have changed in the main game and how they've made the Storm Chimera, which is a Legends unit which hasn't had its points changed in a while, look quite attractive now. And also we're going to get into how the Storm Chimera could open up opportunities in a combined arms list, a Hammer of the Emperor list, and a mechanized assault list because of course, it's another kind of transport, so you're not just limited to 6 chimeras if you include something like the Storm Chimera. So even if you are a veteran, I think this video is going to be worth your time. But what we're going to do for the sake of completeness, and because there will be some people that won't be overly familiar with the base Chimera, is we're going to start off this video with a quick unit review, classic Mordian Glory style, going through the stats and the weapons and all that kind of good stuff. And then at the end of the video, we're going to have that sort of deep dive, nitty gritty stuff for the veterans. Cool. So with that said, now let's take a look at the Storm Chimera's stat line. With a movement of 10 inches, the Storm Chimera is reasonably fast. It has enough movement to keep up with the rest of the Guard motor pool, although it's not quite as fast as things like the Taurox. But it'll get you there faster than if you foot slog it, even with things like move on your infantry, because of course the Storm Chimera can move 10 inches and then your guys can get out so that it can get like a 13-inch move, and then the Storm Chimera itself can benefit from things like move. So 10 inches and putting your guys inside a Storm Chimera is going to absolutely mean that they can get places quicker. The Storm Chimera has a reasonable defensive profile as well. Toughness 9, 3+ save, 11 wounds. You are going to need more than small arms to crack this bad boy open. What is of particular note is the fact that it has 11 wounds, because this means that typically it takes an extra shot for your opponent to kill it than they expect, because a lot of weapons are damage 2 in Warhammer 40k, and so rather than having to do 5 wounds to kill the Chimera, they have to do 6. And I cannot tell you the number of times my opponent has thought that he has killed a Chimera only for it to be left on 1 wound. So 11 wounds is very, very nice. It's a really good break point. Toughness 9 means that you're pretty durable against a lot of the standard special weapons out there, plasma gun and plasma gun equivalent, because obviously some factions don't have plasma guns exactly, but they have an equivalent to them. But serious heavy weapons like las cannons and las cannon equivalent are going to be able to chew through your Storm Chimera fairly easily. They're an armored vehicle, but they're not like a full-blown tank like a Leman Russ or a Rogel Dawn. Leadership 7+, completely standard issue in the Guard, not much to write home about there. Objective control of 2 is nice, pretty typical for a dedicated transport of this size. Overall, the Storm Chimera, and by extension the Chimera chassis in general, is a nice all-rounder. Decent durability, decent maneuverability. But what about its firepower? Well, this is where the Storm Chimera really starts coming into its own, because it's got a lot of guns for a transport. The Storm Chimera comes with an autocannon and a heavy bolter. The autocannon is really what separates the Storm Chimera from the regular Chimera. You see, a normal Chimera comes with either a heavy bolter, a heavy flamer, or a multi-laser in the turret, but the Storm Chimera has to have an autocannon. It comes with a heavy bolter in the hull, and you can swap that hull heavy bolter out for a heavy flamer, and you can give it a hunter killer missile, and you can give it a heavy stubber or a storm bolter. Now, for me personally, I would stick with it as a Dakka Chimera. The autocannon and the heavy bolter are both ranged weapons, and so they're more focused toward doing that Dakka. Autocannon, heavy bolter, and heavy stubber, plus you've got the firing deck, plus you've got the lasgun array. You're going to have a lot of ranged firepower to be able to chuck out of this thing. Unlike in a normal Chimera where you can swap the turret weapon out, you can't do that with the Storm Chimera, and that's why I recommend you stick with the autocannon and the heavy bolter. When looking at a regular Chimera, I'll often say, look, putting a flamer in the turret and a flamer in the hull, fantastic way of being able to get all the burny. It's like running a pseudo Hellhound. But I don't like mixing and matching weapons that are really tooled up for doing different jobs. So that's why I don't recommend you go autocannon and heavy flamer. I say, look, go for all the Dakka, autocannon, heavy bolter, hunter killer missile, heavy stubber, and then whatever you want to have shooting out the back with that firing deck. Now, as it is the defining weapon of the Storm Chimera, I do think we need to do a bit of a deep dive on the autocannon. So it's just a normal autocannon, 48-inch range, 2 attacks, ballistic skill 4+, strength 9, AP -1, damage 3. This is the same as you can find on many other vehicles in the Imperial Guard, but it's unique to the Storm Chimera because it's the only Chimera chassis which can take an autocannon. And I think it's really good. Truth be told, if I could take autocannons on my standard Chimeras, I would do every single day of the week. They are better than heavy bolters. A normal Chimera can put a heavy bolter in the turret, and often that is my go-to choice. But I'd be lying to you if I said there haven't been times when I've wished I had a punchier weapon on it. Plenty of times, even in a combined arms attachment, when just fishing for sixes, either to hit or to wound, just ain't cutting it. And sustained hits is kind of nice, but it's not guaranteed that they're going to pop off. The autocannon is just a better weapon. It's just a more powerful weapon than the heavy bolter. There's no two ways about it. The strength 9 allows it to really punch upwards and downwards at the same time, which is very, very important in the current 10th edition meta that we find ourselves. Now, I know that we're talking about a Legends unit here, and so strictly speaking, it's probably not going to turn up in many tournaments, but as we all know, the competitive scene has basically completely consumed the casual scene, and so even if you're playing with your Storm Chimera in a standard sort of pickup game or with mates down at the club or in the basement bunk or whatever it may be, you're still going to be encountering some pretty meta adjacent or meta stuff. And the 40k 10th edition meta has, generally speaking, since day one, been vehicle orientated. And so having strength 9 allows you to actually threaten vehicles. There's a lot of times when you have your bolter will just be fishing for 6 to wound, whereas your Storm Chimera might be on 4s to wound or 5s to wound at worst. I mean, against a lot of the knights that are out there now, the baby knights, they've gone down to toughness 9. Suddenly that autocannon on the Storm Chimera is looking really tasty because it can wound those knights on a 4+. But we've also got a more specific meta that's been developing in 10th edition. So generally it's vehicles or monsters, but specifically we're looking at elite infantry. And more I'm finding it hard for my heavy bolters to be able to get the job done against these elite infantry armies. A lot of the time I'm facing infantry which have got 3 wounds. And my heavy bolters are, they're doing some work, but it'd just be nice if every time my opponent failed to save, one of his elite infantry dudes gets just knocked on his ass. So the autocannon having the flat damage 3 opens that up for me. If my opponent fails a save on that Custodes, sure, they might have a guy with a shield, but if they don't have the guy with the shield, that Custodes dies. Facing off against Gravis weapons, dies. Blade Guard dies. So I think Blade Guard got 3 wins. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the point is, damage 3 is really, really nice. And as is always the case of 40k, you start off with damage 2 being enough at the beginning of the edition, and by the end of the edition, you need to be strapping damage 3 to everything. And so the autocannon is, I'm not trying to make a big deal out of it, it's still just one autocannon. Obviously, if you're taking loads of these things, then we start getting economies of scale and stuff like that. But the point is that the autocannon is a better weapon for the current meta than the heavy bolter. And so the Storm Chimera having the autocannon is actually really nice. But moving on from the weapons, let's have a quick look at the abilities. We've already mentioned firing deck 2. This means that 2 models can shoot out of the top of the firing deck unless they're a heavy weapon team, in which case they count as 2. So 1 heavy weapon team can fire out the top of the firing deck. Very nice ability for the Chimera to have, same as you've got it on the regular Chimera. And it will really depend on what you're putting in the Chimera will determine how you want to use that firing deck. Some people like to put heavy weapon teams in there so that they can have like a las cannon shooting out at the top. I'm not a big fan of doing that just because I feel like at that point you might as well just pay for a proper tank. But what's really nice is if it allows the infantry that you were taking anyway to be able to contribute to the fight without jumping out of the vehicle. So I think that considering the Storm Chimera is focused on Dakar, having like a Cadian squad in the back here with like a plasma gun and maybe a grenade launcher or plasma gun and melter gun really sort of contributes to the overall punch of the Storm Chimera. In a regular Chimera where you can get flamers everywhere on the Chimera itself, putting Catachans in the back makes a lot of sense because then you're getting 2 flamers from the Catachans on the firing deck, heavy flame from the turret, heavy flame from the hull. With the Storm Chimera, I think putting Catachans in the back is still nice because you're going to give the Storm Chimera scout from those Catachans. But to me, it feels more natural to put something like, I would say Cadians and Kriegers, but Kriegers are a bit expensive these days. But putting something like Cadians in the back, very nice because it's going to give you the ability to shoot that plasma gun and grenade launcher or melter gun out the top. Would I go for the grenade launcher or would I go for the melter gun? I mean, I always say plasma and melter is better, but I do quite like the idea of the grenade launcher. It's a bit more long range and firing that crack grenade. It really has a similar profile to the autocannon, so I wouldn't be against having plasma and grenade shooting out the top of this. Interestingly as well, if we're talking about Legends units, I think this is a pretty good transport for the Death Corps of Krieg Grenadiers because they also get a couple of special weapon guys that can shoot out of the top, and they can take duplicates. So it's kind of interesting to have maybe a Storm Chimera with double plasma grenadiers shooting out of the top, and then if the Chimera starts getting surrounded by a horde of buggers, you can have the heavy flamer guy come out the top and start hosing things down. So I think Grenadiers work well in this, and I also think that Cadians work well in this as well. So that just about covers the Storm Chimera unit review, just looking at its datasheet. And whilst it's similar to the regular Chimera, I think that there's just with the autocannon, there's enough there to make it feel unique and distinctive. But I did say we were going to get into a bit of a nitty-gritty deep dive on the Storm Chimera and the bigger picture and talking about things like different detachments and stuff like that. So let's do that now. So the first thing that I want to mention is the fact that the Storm Chimera is a dedicated transport. And because it is a separate unit to a regular Chimera, it means that if you wanted to, using the Storm Chimera Legends datasheet, you can get up to 12 Chimeras in a pure Imperial Guard list. And if things start getting really, really crazy and points allowing, you could actually have 14 Chimeras in an Imperial Guard list because you could have 6 from the Guard, 6 from the Storm Chimeras, and then 2 from Imperial Agents. Now, I don't know if you're ever going to be able to want to run 14 Chimeras. 12 is probably enough, but you can really get a lot of Chimera hulls if you start opening up the idea of Warhammer Legends. In fact, as crazy as it might sound, if you wanted to go for a proper mechanized army, I'm talking all Chimeras with infantry inside them, then for 6 regular Chimeras, 6 Storm Chimeras, and then 12 squads of infantry that are 65 points each. So that could be command squads, or you could go for Catachans, or you could go for Cadians. It comes into, and let me just get my calculator here, 1,830 points. There's actually enough points left over that if you wanted to start putting Kriegers in here, you could do. You could make an entire army of Dakar Chimeras. You can have 6 regular Chimeras, all with double heavy bolter, heavy stubber, hunter killer missile, and then have Cadians inside there with grenade launchers, plasma guns, or melter guns. And then you could actually get 6 Storm Chimeras and fill those with 6 squads of Deathcore of Krieg. And they could also have things like plasma guns, melter guns, grenade launchers, whatever combination you wanted to go for. That's actually a very, very powerful army, especially in something like a combined arms detachment. Because, yes, you don't have any true anti-tank, but think of all of the lethal hits that you can generate. You're going to have the ability to generate loads of lethal hits, and you're still going to have 120 infantry for all the objective control goodness. If Storm Chimeras were allowed in a tournament, running 12 Chimeras, I think, would be genuinely meta. You'd have enough lethal hits to just lethal everyone to death, and you'd have enough objective control to have every objective every turn. It'd be mental. But it's not just the combined arms attachment that could really benefit from this. Think about the mechanized assault detachment. One of the issues with mech assault is it can feel quite limited because you just can't get enough transports. You've got Tauroxes and you've got Chimeras, but then you've just got this feeling like the Tauroxes aren't really bringing enough firepower themselves. They're just gun trucks that just get one unit from one side to the other and they jump out and whatnot. I mean, yeah, they're fine, but they're very much like it's a one-way trip, a unit in a Taurox, right? But the idea of going mech assault and then taking 12 Chimeras is like, okay, that's interesting. Because now I've not only got plenty of dedicated transports so I can be running forward, jumping infantry out, and then they can do their thing and then die. Not only have I got plenty of that, but I've also got redundancy inbuilt as well. I've got 12 units which are all going to benefit from jumping out and blasting people. You know, we've talked about this in the context of like Kriegers and Cadians, but you know, straight away you've also got Ogryns right there. So all the Chimeras are adding decent firepower to the list, and then all the units that are inside are there's a lot of opportunities for you to generate that +1 to wound from mech assault. We've also got the Hammer of the Emperor detachment, which works very well with mechanized armies. And then you've also got the Siege attachment, where you could start making these Chimeras feel even more tough, because you start putting smoke on your Chimeras and making them quite difficult for your opponent to deal with. I think those last two don't benefit as much from it, but I still think that there is some play there, of course. And I don't think Recon really benefits from this in any way, shape or form. I mean, I guess a bit, but not really. But then you've also got the what the hell's it called? The Bridgehead Strike Force, that's it. That could benefit from this. Having a bunch of Scions inside Storm Chimeras, it's kind of interesting. But, truth be told, I do think that whilst every guard detachment could benefit from taking just more Chimeras, combined arms and mech assault are clearly the big winners. I mean, at the end of the day, you're just doubling the amount of potential Chimeras that you can take. And that opens up huge tactical possibilities. But we're looking at this from an extreme point of view. We're looking at this from the lens of, what if we just took all the Chimeras? But there's a totally other way of looking at this, which is, what if you just took the Storm Chimeras as your primary transport rather than the normal Chimeras? So in the past, before the Storm Chimera was a Legends unit, it wasn't really worth considering because its points were just so much higher than that of the regular Chimera. But as time has gone on, and one of the benefits of the Storm Chimera going to Legends is its points just haven't been messed with. But the points of the regular Chimera have. So a normal Chimera now is 85 points. A Storm Chimera is 90. That's only a 5-point difference. And I'll be real with you. Every single day of the week, I would happily spend 5 extra points to get my Chimera a goddamn autocannon. You better believe I would do that. I've played a lot of Met Guard. I've taken them to America. I have played them all over the UK in big tournaments and little tournaments. I love playing Met Guard. And I can tell you right now, if I had access to the Storm Chimera, sure, I'd probably run a meme list of like 12 Chimeras and it might end up being quite a good meme list. But if I was running a sensible list, I would absolutely swap every Chimera out I had for Storm Chimeras. It's just a straight boost getting the autocannon, and it's only 5 points. In the past, when it was a 15-point upgrade, or maybe even like a 20-point upgrade, no, not worth it. But a 5-point upgrade? Yes. No questions asked. Absolutely. So in summary, the Storm Chimera is basically a regular Chimera with an autocannon. But its existence opens up all sorts of interesting thoughts and possibilities. The idea of being able to run a truly proper, full mechanized guard company, but also with how the points have changed over the years, it's just a better Chimera that I know a lot of guard commanders would happily have as their go-to choice if they could take it. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Are you a fan of the Storm Chimera? Do you think that it's a good transport? Or are you just going to stick to regular Chimeras and Tauroxes? If you enjoyed today's video, then don't forget to go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe if you never want to miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Redfield, 32, Jurgens, Miasma, Try Again, Bragg, RJ, Scorpion, Bonbon Vert, Lord Pryor, Nicholas Walsh, John Stubbs, Guardian, Varney, Sword, Fish Trombone, Picklock the Forged. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.